Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming at you live from episode 96 of Life on the Rocks with your host, Connor Rocques. Today's featured guest in the hot seat is Alicia Wood. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Connor?
I'm doing wonderful. Honestly, it's a pleasure to have Alicia in the hot seat this morning, actually. For anybody in the city of Greater Sudbury on our audience who doesn't know this young lady, she is the founder and CEO of Covergalls. She is a top 100 global inspiring women in mining entrepreneur and inspiration. So that's huge in itself. The first question I kind of want to ask you to get this rolling, what got you started in business?
You know what I always say? I grew up in mining. So, growing up, my father, my grandfather, my uncles, everybody was in the mining industry. In 1979, my father, along with his father and uncle, started Markup Mining. So, growing up, I'd spend my weekends in the shop. I often wonder, was it the pizza and the donuts that brought me there? But I definitely enjoyed my time in the shop. And I guess just growing up, I just wanted to fill my father's shoes one day.
100%. And fast forward years, and you've been on Dragon's Den. I mean, that's an accomplishment in itself, and then top 100 inspiring women. So give us a little bit of your story. So you started off in the mining sector. What started Covergalls? Kind of give us a background on that.
Well, actually, you know what? Even if I bring it back a little bit before that, so like I mentioned, I kind of grew up in the shop at Markup Mining, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be my father. Unfortunately, when I was 13 years old in grade 8, my father passed away unexpectedly. He had just assumed the position of president of the company, was just about to move into his office, and that didn't happen. My grandfather did come back to take over the company, and then my grandmother sold it a few years later. So for me, going into high school, I had to really rethink what I was going to do with my career. I knew at that time I was heavily involved in Girl Guides, and I loved kind of being around children, so I thought maybe a teacher was a role for me. So I actually started to pursue the path of being a teacher. As I was in my courses, I started to work at Markup Mining part-time just to fulfill some of the hours of my day, and that's when I fell back into mining.
It's huge. And talk about, you've probably seen a huge shift with everything going digital. Talk about that for a second, how you've watched from, traditional mining to now where we're more globalized in a sense. And even if you look at your company, it's global sphere. Talk about that change you've witnessed over the last several years.
Yeah, definitely. I think people don't realize the technology and the innovation that is in the mining industry. People just, I think, still have that perception that it's, you're at the face, it's a big miner, dirt on his face, doing things manually, but that's not the case. I mean, you have drones, you have the use of iPads, automation is huge, and the introduction of battery electric vehicles underground too.
Huge. Yeah. Can you talk to me? This is important. So, being an entrepreneur obviously isn't a difficult choice to go into that road. And then again, having maybe some background in entrepreneurship through your father is great. It's a great experience. But talk about some of the struggles and how you've overcame adversity when taking the leap of faith to become an entrepreneur.
Well, I think first, how was the Covergall born? Well, the first time I had to go underground, I had to get all geared up. So I had to go to the local safety supply store to get my boots, hard hat, coveralls, belt, and there was absolutely nothing for women. So I bought the smallest that I could find, even having to take my coveralls into a seamstress to make them a little bit better. But it wasn't until I went underground that first time. It was actually at Valet Stobie Mine, and went underground with a few gentlemen. And when we took the cage down and we got off the cage, I said to the guys, if I have to go to the bathroom today, where do I go? And they all started to laugh at me, and they pointed to the end of a dark drift, and I thought, oh, this can't happen today. So I just avoided using the washroom. Came to surface and thought, there's got to be something better. So did some research, Googled, and all I could find were female gardening coveralls, which certainly weren't going to, do the job for me in an underground mining environment. And so that's when I thought maybe there was, maybe this was something. But you're right. I think sometimes timing matters, and I decided not to pursue that because, somebody simply said to me, how many other women do you see?
100%.
So, well, not very many. So maybe. So I actually put the idea on the back burner. And for the next 10 years, just never drank anything before I went underground.
No kidding.
So
100%. Yeah. Well, that's almost unfair in a sense. Can you talk to me about? I think it's very important, especially in quote unquote, not anymore because it's shifting and you're part of that shift. How is it, is it intimidating going into kind of a male-dominated environment, or does it fire you up where you're going in there as an influence? I think it's super important.
I think it depends on which lens are you looking at that day, right? So yes, it can be super intimidating, especially when you feel that you maybe have to prove yourself 2 or 3 times more. So when I walk into, a room at a mine site and I'm promoting, because my whole career has been in underground mobile equipment, when I have to sell the equipment, understand their challenges, the environment in which the equipment operates, and I'm talking to miners who have been in the industry for 30 years, it can be very intimidating. On the flip side, it definitely can be inspiring, and it actually can put some fuel on the fire to actually prove them wrong and prove that, you know, we do know what we're talking about, we have the knowledge and the expertise, and we can bring something to the industry. So I think it's a bit of both.
Absolutely. I think that's actually a really great approach and perspective. What would your advice be to younger women getting into the mining sector? What would be some of the things that maybe you've learned that you would tell them if they're entering in, if they're intimidated or scared a little bit?
Well, I mean, definitely it's not easy, but I don't think it, you know, maybe it's probably not easy for any gender. But I definitely think, you know, the mining industry can provide rewarding career. You know, it pays very well.
Totally.
And also the opportunity for growth. And I know for myself, you know, one of the things that I have really enjoyed about mining is just being able to travel the world and being able to visit all these cool spots. You know, with the company that I represented, you know, I've had an opportunity to travel to Ecuador, to Argentina, to Alaska, to the Northwest Territories. So that's been a pretty incredible part of the job.
That's wonderful. Talk about a little bit your consulting. So you do consulting. Is it AG Consulting?
CG Consulting.
CG Consulting.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Can you talk about what do you necessarily do with the consulting side? So, because again, it's a broad term in a sense. Like, what are some of the things you do? You go into mines, you work with different clients. Like, walk us through that, because I think that's important. Where that's another avenue that people would be able to get into that type of field and work.
Yeah, I think so. CG Aligned Consulting was launched in the fall of 2019, and it was launched as kind of I guess formalizing what we were doing on the Covergalls side to begin with. So, you know, Covergalls started off as the female coverall, and then we quickly grew to be a complete line of workwear. But what we discovered is half of our work was actually educating people on why it was so important that women need specific PPE. And then also some of the other work was, you know, talking with companies about their strategies and their initiatives to actually create a more diverse workforce. But looking beyond that, how can we create a more inclusive work environment? So we were kind of doing those things informally and, to be honest, not getting paid for it. And we just, you know, had an opportunity to team up with Yamana Gold, who has their head office in Toronto, and we toured their facility and their operations in Brazil.
That's wonderful.
And so just having that partnership with Yamana Gold to really engage with their workforce, understand the challenges that both genders have with respect to workwear, perhaps facilities, bathroom facilities, totally. Underground, change rooms, and how really they could diversify their workforce and really make all their employees feel included. So that's kind of how the consulting side was born. We have since started to work with other major mining companies on not just diversity inclusion, but also looking at mobile equipment, right. And how can it be designed to attract a more inclusive and diverse workforce.
I love that. That's actually a huge approach, and it kind of leads into the next question. What are some of the things that when you're doing your consulting that you tell companies or different industries and places, how do you break down those barriers to kind of stop the divide, you know, between genders and things like that? Like, what are some of the things that you would focus on to help kind of alleviate that stress so that when you are going into a workforce, it is more inclusive?
Well, I think, you know, when we work with companies, we're coming in as kind of like a third party neutral. So, totally. You know, I think employees are far more open and honest with us, provide us with their feedback, which really allows us to make recommendations to improve the way things are. I think also because our team has been there, you know, myself, I've lived through that experience. I've been in the industry for 21 years. So I think there's a level of comfort, you know, with the employees when they talk to us because they know we've been there and we're really there to make things better.
Totally. I love that. What do you think is probably the most difficult part of your job? If you don't mind me asking, again, I'm trying to get inside the mind of you know, the entrepreneur on that side of it.
Well, I think as an entrepreneur, you're trying to balance everything, right?
No such thing as balance, yeah.
And it's not a smooth path. There are definitely some, you know, sleepless nights where you're trying to think of, you know, perhaps even, you know, when's that next, you know, sale going to come in, or is my manufacturer going to be on time? So there's definitely a lot of challenges, but it has been extremely rewarding, and it's taken a long time. It does not happen overnight. As I mentioned, you know, it did take me those 10 years to actually decide to do something. But that was in the summer of 2011, and we didn't launch until Dragon's Den, which was in the fall of 2014. So,
which is huge.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through that breakthrough moment you had? What was the moment? Like, there always is like a specific breakthrough or something in your life that triggers that thought where you say, you know what, I'm going to leave this and go and pursue this? Like, do you have a specific moment? What inspired you to do that?
So I think the moment was in the summer of 2011. I found myself out at Mosaic's potash mine in Kalonze, Saskatchewan. And that particular day, I remember my colleague, we got to the cage and there was a big watering trough, essentially. So you would bring your Bubba jug and you'd fill it up with water and you'd go underground. And he said, I bought you this new Bubba jug, fill it up. And I said, Steve, I don't drink water when we go underground. And he said, no, you're going to want it. It's really dry and dusty. And I said, Steve, I've been underground for 10 years. I've been to potash mines. I'm fine. I don't need water. And so he was pretty insistent. And I said, if it's going to make you happy, I'm going to put a bottle of water in my pocket and we'll do that. And he said, okay. So went underground that day. And what he'd failed to share with me was we were going to actually be running under the conveyor that day.
Oh.
So it was extremely dry and dusty. Like I could scrape the potash from my face and without realizing it, had consumed 3 bottles of water.
No kidding.
We got back to the cage. I was all excited. Got to go to surface. Finally, get to use the washroom. I'd consumed 3 bottles of water, and the cage tender said, "We're down for maintenance. It's going to be a few more hours." And that's when I looked around me, and it was all men. And I just said to, one of the guys from Mosaic at the time, I said, "Okay, I have to use the washroom. Where should I go?" And he brought me down a couple of drifts. We found a porta potty. Unfortunately, had no door. So I proceeded to, step in, turn off my cap lamp because I didn't want anybody to see me. Went to, disrobe. And as you can imagine, things are falling out of my pocket. I'm trying not to let my garments touch the ground because it was, it was disgusting.
Dirty.
And I remember after zipping everything back up, and I left the stuff that had fallen on the ground, and I walked back to the station, and I sat there with the guys around me, and I said, I will never wear your coverall again. And so for me, that was the moment when I knew I needed to do something, and if it wasn't going to, be something for other women, at least it was going to make my life a lot safer and a lot easier.
And fast forward to where you are now. And I think that's actually an incredible story because there always is that moment, that pivotal point where you say, okay, I've had enough. And I think what you've done is exceptional. So can you talk to me? I think this is important, especially one of the biggest things that people don't like to talk about a lot of time because there's an icky feeling is selling. I don't consider it selling. We're helping for a living. As long as you're not selling crap. But you're not, in that sense, as long as you're not selling crap.
Yeah.
So talk to me about kind of your sales process and how you got to the point of launching with Dragon's Den. Like, that's incredible. I mean, that in itself is an accomplishment regardless of whatever that is. That is a pretty big accomplishment. I think you're the only one in Sudbury right now that's been on Dragon's Den.
I think there's been a couple others.
Or a couple, but we'll give you the credit. We'll give you the credit on that.
Yeah, so like I'd said, I came back from that trip in Saskatchewan and I took my coveralls to a local seamstress here in Sudbury, and I remember marking up just a sketch paper saying what I wanted to do to the garment to make it easier for me so that it would fit, which is huge on the safety side, but also functioning. So, Anne took my coveralls and she modified them, and I was super excited. Finally had a pair of coveralls that not only fit me better, but I could actually function in terms of bathroom breaks. And what made it unique was I essentially took, the features of kind of your old school long johns, a rear trap door, built it into the garment, hid those features so that, if you were standing beside me, you wouldn't realize my garment had these features. And so I actually just started wearing them. And when I would go underground, if I saw a female, she would kind of look at me and say, wow, like, coveralls fit so well and you're drinking water, how is this possible? And so women started to learn about the pair of coveralls that I had modified. And at that time, I was spending a lot of time here at Valet, and so the women there would ask me to make them a pair. So before I knew it, Anne was making, we make a pair for this woman and then another pair. And Valet actually approached us and said, listen, we love what you're doing. Safety is number one for us. Totally. And not only, safety, but we want to attract and retain a female workforce. And we really believe that this is a tool that can help us to achieve that. So Valet gave us a number of women to test and trial our garment, and went through trials and testing for probably about a period of 8 or so months. To gather feedback, and once the feedback was collected, Valet's PPE committee, so their personal protective equipment committee, came together and said, we're giving you the green light to make your product available to our employees. So for us, that was kind of the tipping point. And around that time, I was actually watching Dragon's Den with my family. So my husband, my daughter, my son, and I love to watch Dragon's Den. It's a bit of a game show. We would decide whether we're going to invest or not. And my son at the time would imitate Kevin O'Leary. Right, The commercial was about auditions. Right. And the audition was actually taking place in Sudbury, I think, in 2 days. And my husband and I kind of looked at each other and thought, I wonder if this is, you know, the platform and the opportunity to launch the product.
Totally. Can you walk me through, like, how did you face that fear? Because, I mean, that's a big pitch. And a lot of people, it's one of those things that my whole mentality is that fear is just a thought. Thoughts can be changed. But it's the thing to embrace that chaos in that moment and walk in. Like, talk to me as you were walking down the stairs and you're going and you see them lined up. Like, how did you face that fear? What did you tell yourself? Was there something? Did you talk to your husband? Did you make a phone call? Like, how did you overcome that fear?
Well, I think, you know, you talk about fear, and the one thing that I always say to people is to never use fear as a reason, you know, not to do something, right? Like, and, you know, don't worry about fear. And so, yeah, I was terrified. You know, I went to the audition and they had said, you know, in a month, you may or may not hear back from us. But in 2 weeks, CBC had reached out to me and said, you know, we want you to come down and pitch. And so they actually gave kind of 4 weeks, a window of 4 weeks that you could select to actually go down and pitch. So I actually picked like the last available slot because I thought, you know, I'm going to spend the time just really understanding my business, understanding the market, and going in prepared.
100%.
You know, I've watched The Dragon's Den. I've seen it go one way or the other way. And I just want to make sure that I was well equipped. So I selected that last slot, and I have never studied that hard in my life. I actually, you know, read the book because Dragon's Den had the book. For sure. And I just made sure that I was prepared. And when we drove down to Toronto for the pitch, it was my husband and a girlfriend of mine, Andrea. I mean, I had like a list of questions that I, you know, made them ask me on the drive down, you know, so they were just like quizzing me all the way down. And so I felt like mentally I was prepared to go in. You know, I believed in the product. I was wearing the product. And I also viewed it, you know, under the advice of my producer that I was working with. She just said, you know, this is an opportunity for you to present your product. Whether you're successful or not is irrelevant. And, you know, treat the time in the den as an opportunity to promote, almost like an infomercial.
Absolutely.
And so her advice really, you know, helped me. I remember walking up the stairs to be able to like walk across and come down, and my heart was racing and I thought I was going to vomit. And the producer said, "Here, just have just drink this water."
There you go.
And I later thought, where did that water come
what
from?
What did you put in it? Yeah.
No, and when I was walking down the stairs, I was honestly worried about tripping. That was like my number one fear. It wasn't actually facing them. It was, am I going to make it down the stairs safely?
Right.
Because when you do actually get to the bottom of the stairs, it's low lighting. They have no emotion on their face, which is extremely intimidating. But once you start having a conversation with them, it just, you know, completely opens things up, make you feel far more comfortable, and you don't realize that there's actually 50 people around you and 100 cameras.
No kidding, that's huge. There was another spot off of that. So when you got in, what do you think was the hardest part? Like, did you, like when they start asking questions, like talk about also that, and then your experience after. Like, how did that change your life? Like when you went out, like after being on TV from that. Talk about the pivotal change that happened.
Yeah, you know, I think some of the things you don't see too, like I was in the den for, you know, more than the 7 minutes that were aired. It was 45 or so minutes. And I mean, they were all truly amazing. And I never, you know, thought that would be the outcome. I mean, to have to decide, I'm not sure if you watched the pitch, but to have to decide which dragon to choose from. I mean, how do you choose among a panel like that? But I think you go into the den thinking that you need the investment. I think that's what you think, even watching that you need the investment. But the reality is you don't need that investment. I think what it did for Covergalls was obviously bring our product to market, but it also actually created a community. I mean, the outreach that we got from, you know, women in different industries and different roles actually just thanking us and saying that they had felt like they were on their own island and, you know, nobody understood the challenges that they had, but wow, this product is, you know, across national TV, and this is me, you know, and so it kind of just pulled everybody together. It also made us realize that the product wasn't just applicable to mining.
100%.
We are born in mining, but the garment is really applicable across so many other industries, and so for us, it was exciting to get that feedback from women and also highlight, you know, the opportunities in the mining industry and highlight Sudbury. You know, 100%. It was just that in itself was pretty cool.
How proud does that make you being from Sudbury, being able to go onto the world sphere, like going onto a world stage in a sense, like where you've spoken all over the world and things like that? Like, what kind of pride does that give you? Because I mean, that's a big accomplishment too, and it's something that everyone says you got to go to Toronto. Like everyone says you got to go out of town, LA, Toronto, New York, England, whatever it is. But we're Sudbury born and raised in a sense. Like, what kind of pride does that give you? How do you feel when getting to be able to represent your city?
I mean, can words explain it, right?
Right.
I think, I was born and raised in Sudbury. I did try and move to Toronto. It didn't last very long. I came back home. I think Sudbury has so much to offer. Obviously, I'm born and raised in mining, and mining is the industry that I love and support. But in terms of, the living in Sudbury, you just think of how fortunate we are to have what's around us, I'll share a story with you. So, we're into manufacturing, but, we don't have our own manufacturing facility in terms of our line of workwear. So we partner with Canadian manufacturers to produce our workwear line. And, a couple of years ago, our manufacturing partner became really busy with their own production. So they subcontracted us to another manufacturer, and, again, I didn't do due diligence, and shame on me. And so there's learnings that you can take from them, and you never make those mistakes again. But I had just assumed, because it was our strong number one manufacturing partner, that they knew and they trusted this subcontractor. So we relied on the subcontractor, and as we started to progress, they stopped. That the communication started to slow down. They had taken deposits. They weren't delivering product. They would say, oh, it's getting ready to ship Friday. Friday would come, silence. Monday would come, nothing. So, the deliveries that they committed to, let's say 4 to 6 weeks, grew to 4 to 6 months. And so those issues keep you up, because that is our company, right? Like, we need to manufacture product. Women need safe product in their hands. And I remember driving, and my daughter at the time was probably 8 or 9, and she was in the back seat, and the manufacturer and I were on the phone, and I just said, listen, I need honest communication so I can update my clients. I'm telling them Friday, and then Friday comes and I have nothing. You just need to be honest with me so that myself, Covergalls, and the clients can prepare. We can plan for this, but we just need to know what's going on. And he said, yeah, I'll get you an update by the end of the day, and it's going to ship tomorrow. And hung up the phone, and my daughter said, Mom, he's lying to you. I said, he's lying to me. She goes, oh yeah. She said, let's wait till tomorrow and let's see if he calls you. But she said, Mom, I have a feeling from the sound of his voice that he's not being honest with you.
Right.
And, sure enough, she was right at that age.
Oh my God.
He was not being honest and truthful, and he failed to deliver. So what I learned from that is, I can't rely on others to do due diligence. We need to be doing that in terms of, vetting manufacturing partners.
Of course.
We also just can't rely on one manufacturing partner.
100%.
You'll be dead in the water. So what we did is we actually reached out to Global Affairs Canada and the Trade Commissioner in Apparel and said, listen, we've got this product, we've got demand for it. We want to keep our product in Canada. We want to support the Canadian economy, but you need to help us, vet manufacturing partners. So teamed up with them, and we were able to get a list of manufacturing partners, and we do have a great partner right now. So
that's huge. No, it's really good. Something we do in our business, actually, I think it might be of value even for the audience out there. We run tests. So before we go into partnership with businesses, or if we're going to align, it's something I've done personally for years. We run, it's called on Openpsychometricsorg, the Dark Triad test. So it's a psychological test that looks for triggers. So narcissism, Machiavellian, or psychopathy, which is a little bit weird, but what it does is it just gives you an introduction into maybe there's potential triggers. So if you have someone that scores high on the Machiavellian sphere, there could be some lying and ability in that sense. So it's just a cool thing. We'll talk after the mic, but just for the audience out there, so Openpsychometricsorg, if you want to just get a look into someone's mind, just say, hey, we're looking to partner, would you be able to do this psychology test? And it's just another way.
Should have been able to, that would have been helpful.
It would have been good. And then if he scores high Machiavellian, you're like, this guy's got a tendency, so you look for those things. And again, you open mind in business, right? So, but I just wanted to mention that. I think it'd be something cool.
No, that is a good point, because in the beginning, when him and I were engaging the owner of this company, everything was great. He made some wonderful promises. He was actually delivering on those promises, but it really, it quickly fell off.
Things happen.
And, we were reliant on him. So it really kind of, upset the apple cart. We had a lot of frustrated and upset customers. And then it took us a lot of time and money to regain those customers and then kind of get back on track. So
100%. I really like the transparency, though. I think that's huge in business, and then comes from integrity, where you're saying, hey, this is where we're at. This is what's happening. Something I want to focus on, just for the audience out there, I think it'd be really good. Talk about how you build relationships. So even for the younger women and men, like something in business is relationships. At the end of the day, before you do an exchange, it's relationships. What are some of the things you focus on when building relationships that make them better, and then they build and they open up to referrals and other things like that?
Yeah, relationships are key, right? Because you start to build that the trust with the person, and that person knows that when they have a challenge, or if they need something, they can come to you and you're going to deliver, right? So relationships are key. I've always focused on that in my whole career. And I think it's about even that personal connection too, right? We're all human. We're all people. We all, go home. We have families. And so for me, even with respect to titles in an organization, yeah, you have different titles because you have a different part to play in that company. But to me, I view whenever I've managed team, we're all on one
100%.
playing field, right? So, and I think, just the importance of networking too, right? Building your networking. And I think, as you kind of move through your career, you're going to need different mentors and different guidance along the way. And I think just to never be afraid to reach out and ask. And I have done that in my career. It's been a little intimidating because, you think, oh, CEO of a major mining company, he or she's not going to make time for me. But just ask. The worst that they're going to say is no. And more than not, I've made a lot of my connections that way by just reaching out.
That's actually great. I really like that too. And the thing, even if they don't answer, it's like try again or whatever it is. It doesn't, we have this. We get this idea, and that's where. I always make the joke to my audience. We do the interview strategy. We'll bring someone in to say, hey, just to be able to meet them, give them value, and it's a nice way. And you got to think outside the box in that. And before you know it, some people even when I reach out to you right away, you're like, oh, let's do an interview. It was perfect, just like that. So for anyone out there, do not be scared to reach out to anybody.
Well, and I think that's that's how you learn and that's how you grow. And I think for me, because so many people have offered me guidance and advice and have supported me, I feel that I owe it to others to do the same, right? And some of my greatest mentors have come from that way. One of them, Ian Pierce, he was the ex-CEO of Xstrata Nickel, and he wrote an article in the CIM magazine when he was leaving Xstrata and when Glencore was acquiring it. And he talked about how he couldn't believe that in the industry, two things were lacking. And number one was coveralls for women, and two, bathroom facilities. And I remember reading the article thinking, no, wait, we've got something. And of course, it can be intimidating, but I thought, I'm just going to reach out. And I remember paying the extra LinkedIn premium at that time to be able to get the credit to message him. And, I did reach out, and within 12 hours, he responded to me. Okay. And he's been extremely supportive. And, he's definitely one of my strongest mentors. And I've learned so much from him. But again, it's not using fear of failure as a reason not to do something or reaching out.
100%. Yeah. I kind of want to cross gears. This is important too. So as entrepreneurs, I'm very mission driven. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are on a mission, but it's not about you, it's about the mission and who you want to help. Talk about the importance of giving back in your life and how it's really given you appreciation for business and just overall your lifestyle and everything like that.
I think for me it's so important to give back. I mean, life is short, and I saw that growing up. I we lost my father at a young age. He was 37, and for me, it's about making impact and having change. Like, I don't want to leave this earth knowing that I haven't done anything positive or have contributed or given back in some way. Also, you want to leave a legacy, and I want to, you want to set an example for your children. And I think it's really important to give back. It's not just about you, it's about, those around you. And I think together is how you really make change and really turn things around.
100%. If you look at your team too, right? It's the team is so vital. Like, we go in, I might be a promoter and do these things, but I wouldn't right behind the camera there, Dylan. I'll be able to do it without my partner Kai and our whole team coming together. And I think you're the exact same. What does it take when you're building a team and in those beginning stages to build a culture that people want to be part of? What do you do? Like, what are some of the things advice to people you'd give to kind of get that culture and welcome people in that, we're here to work, but we're also here to have a good time and grow? I
mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to very basics. You treat people the way that you want to be treated. Like, I mean, my mother taught me that piece of advice, when I was just little, and I still follow that to this day, right? And I think, everybody just wants to be valued. They want to feel like they've contributed in a positive way. And so I always encourage open communication. I mean, communication is number one. And I think it's about creating those personal relationships too, right? And everybody plays a part. I compare it to, if you look at sports, for example, if you've got hockey, I mean, there are different positions on that hockey team, but the reality is if they're not all contributing and they don't all respect and value each other, you're not going to win. And 100%. So you're only as good as the support system that you have around you. And I know for me and Covergalls in my career, I mean, I would not be where I am if I didn't have the support of my husband, my children, my mom, my sister, my brother. There is like a whole community behind you. It's not just me.
100%. And I really actually enjoy that. I think it's true. And you look at some of the greatest athletes, the greatest peak performers, just people in general, even like Mother Teresa, the big support mechanisms. One of the things I want to ask you, and this is again switching gears, but it's important to me. So I'm all about energy, and not the funny, funky kind of energy, but I'm all about, if you want to get a job, bring your energy, and you leave an energy signature. What fires you up every day? Like, what gets you excited? Because that's like when you take a career path, entrepreneurship is hard, but it's very fulfilling at the end of the day. So what fires you up every day or inspires you?
I think it's just, I think it's like setting an example for your children, and just knowing that the work that you're doing is making a difference. I mean, that's what fires me up, So again, like getting the messages from, women, and actually not just women, but from men too. That's what inspires me, and that's what keeps me going. And I think too often we're so quick to point out the things that aren't working, or the negatives in people, and I think we don't actually reach out to congratulate and to contribute and to share the good things that we're doing. So for me too, it's like you said, you reached out immediately. Yeah, like why can you not collaborate with people and support people? I mean, it's a win-win for everybody.
100%.
So.
One of the final questions I want to ask that I always ask people is, if you look back on your career and all your accomplishments, the accolades that go with it, what would you tell your younger self? What would you say to that person that it wants to go out there and work and inspire people, that has that mission in their heart? Like, what would you tell them?
When I went to launch Covergalls and, launched on the Dragon's Den, and, the Dragons themselves had made the comment, because I had a full-time career at the time, and David actually was, you need to quit your job tomorrow. And for me, it was an immediate no, because I loved my career. But then I also did believe in Covergalls. And so I went back, and I kind of set myself up for, at some point, I would have to, jump to Covergalls 100%. It's what I wanted to do, but it's scary. It's not secure. It's not stable, and there's risk associated with it. And when you've got a comfy career and things are going really well, and there's tons of room for growth, it's, you kind of get to a crossroads. At what point do you jump into the full world of, entrepreneur and take on your own company? And so I was actually setting myself up for that. And then, Marcotte Mining, the company that my dad had founded, the owners actually had come back to me and asked me if I would come back to the company in the role of general manager. And at that time, I was 37, which was the age that my father was when he passed away. And I almost felt like, I did need to go back and do that. And a mentor of mine said, Alicia, there's no reason why you can't do both. So I did go back and do that, but I think in order to see the true potential of your own endeavors and your own companies, you need to commit 110%. And so in the fall, taking on Covergalls 100% and launching the consulting company really allowed us to see the true potential of Covergalls. And we're heading in the right direction. We're really growing the business. We've been able to bring more people on board, but it's scary and it's risk, but if you do believe in it, then it's worth it. And I always, when I do speaking engagements, I always leave with, one piece of advice. And at the end of the day, you have two choices. You have the choice to build somebody else's dream, or you have the choice to build your own. And I think for me, I've just chosen to build my own dream. And I think I would encourage others to really look in the mirror and think the same.
That's incredible advice. That really is. And it gave me the goosebumps actually on that. And it is one of those things where at the end of the day, if you feel it in your heart, go for it. And I think...
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
You step back and you go back to your job and do what you got to do.
It's all learning, right?
Yeah.
It's all learning, and it really is what makes you grow and what makes you a better person.
Absolutely. Honestly, I just want to say you've inspired tons of people, obviously in the community of Sudbury, but across the world in this. Is there any final thoughts? Where can people find you online, Alicia? Where, if they want to reach out to you, potentially like I have on LinkedIn, what's upcoming? What would you like people to see? Just so we put this in there, we're going to put a link at the bottom for your social medias and things like that. Is there anything you'd like to finish with or to find you?
Well, definitely, like we spoke earlier, reach out. Our team and myself, we want to help people. We want to help them grow in their careers, whether it's personal or professional. And they can visit our website, covergalls.com. We are in the process of building the CG Aligned Consulting website, which we're excited about, because that's just a whole other part of the business that has been growing. And so social media and the website are the best method.
No problem at all. It's okay. You've done an incredible job. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Connor. I really appreciate it. And kudos to you and your team for the work that you guys have been doing, and for really, bringing this to your audience.
Thank you. Appreciate it.